Welcome to Downtown Sports. My name is Downtown Stephen Brown, and in today's video, guys, we're going to be talking about the Toronto Maple Leafs and their expanded roster plans because we got some little inklings from Chris Johnston on one of the more recent editions of the Steve Dangle Podcast, and while Chris doesn't like to be quoted because things aren't finalized, as he made sure to point out, I think that we can paint a pretty good picture on our own of what the Toronto Maple Leafs' lineup and roster and expanded roster is going to look like. But before we talk about the expanded rosters and who's going to be on it and who's not going to be on it and how it's going to work, because Chris said some very interesting things, both sides are targeting a January 13th start date. And this is not necessarily new news, but what I would like to talk about is that they want to play 56 games. And the financials are no longer an issue, but there's still some minor stuff to work out there, like protocols and important dates and scheduling, and it's got to be approved by the NHL Board of Governors and the NHLPA's executive board. But that 56-game schedule is very interesting. If we take a look at the 2018-2019 season, because that's the last full year of hockey that we have to look at, the NHL from January 13th onwards until the end of the season was able to squeeze in anywhere from about 35 to 39 games played for their teams, and they want to squeeze in 56 games for all of the teams from January 13th onwards now. So by looking at that, we can assume that one of two or both of these things to be true. The NHL is going to try to play 56 games into the same amount of days that they played between 35 and 39 in the 2018-2019 season, or they're going to be pushing all the dates back. But if I had to take a guess, it's probably going to be a bit of both because the NHL doesn't want this season to affect the season afterwards. They don't want this one to bleed into next one. So they're more than likely going to be playing a condensed schedule and pushing the dates back a little bit. We're only going to be having 10-day training camps this time around leading into this season. And I think that that's probably going to be something that the NHL borrows and implements into future years. Having a shorter training camp. Do we really need 8 preseason games? Do we really need a training camp that lasts over a month long? Now, the owners will tell you, yes, we do need those 8 preseason games because that's 8 opportunities for them to sell tickets and food and drinks inside their buildings and extra merchandise or whatever have you be. But as a fan, it's boring. I'm sorry. I don't want to watch the B or C team Leafs play up against the C or D team Ottawa Senators. I don't want to watch a split squad game. Chris Johnston was saying that they're more than likely going to go with a 25 or a 26-man roster, and that's opposed to the 23 regular-man roster that we're already used to. But he also noted that if you're going to be carrying 25 or 26 skaters, that you're going to have to be cap compliant with those 25 or 26 players. So how are they ever going to be able to afford a 24th, 25th, or even possible 26th man on this roster if they got $0 to work with 23 guys on it? Well, they could just not carry the maximum amount of skaters that you're allowed to, and we already talked about the possibility of them having a 20-man roster, and that's just the bare minimum. You got just enough guys to ice the team that night, and there are no scratches. And the benefit to doing this is that you have more cap space, and what you're able to do with that cap space is throughout the course of the season, players are getting paid their salaries, so come the trade deadline, all of their cap hits are prorated to what they've already been paid out. So that $1.5 million is not the same as what it is on trade deadline day. It's actually quite a bit more. And there's a couple of things that need to happen in order for this to even be something that you would consider, and that's having an all-Canadian division, and Gary Bettman's already mentioned it, it's more than likely going to happen. Because if you have an all-Canadian division, then that more than likely means that the American Hockey League affiliates that are affiliated with those Canadian teams are going to be traveling with the NHL team. So if the Leafs play the Canucks, then the Comets will also play the Marlies on the same day, and why do you need to have healthy scratches when your American Hockey League team is just down the hall in the same hotel as you? But again, nothing is finalized. We're all just talking this out, and so far it's making sense. But the 25 or 26-man roster is not the extent of it. There's probably going to be a taxi squad, which Chris Johnston mentioned, and it's more than likely going to be about 4 players. And the taxi squad is more than likely going to be a group of guys that is allowed to travel with the big team, that is allowed to practice with the big team, but will not count against your salary cap. But the caveat to those players not counting against your salary cap is that they will be subject to waivers. Which is why it only makes sense to have players on your taxi squad who are already exempt from waivers. And with training camp starting towards the end of December, early January, and the gold medal game not scheduled until January 5th, the Maple Leafs are not sending Nick Robertson to the World Junior Championships to participate for Team USA. So if you take a look at the Maple Leafs' cap-friendly page after the fact, and you look at which guys have the green arrow here to signify that they are exempt from waivers, which of the 4 guys are the Toronto Maple Leafs going to select to be on their taxi squad? But I think what kills the idea of having a 20-man roster is that the league wants teams to carry 3 goalies because they want to avoid situations like what happened in the NFL and the Denver Broncos, where they didn't have anyone to play QB. I mean, you could ask a defenseman to play forward, you can ask a forward to play defenseman, but you wouldn't want either of the 2 to play goalie for you. And before you start shouting at me saying that Aaron Dell makes $800,000 because $800,000 is the maximum that you're allowed to recall under an emergency basis, I would say to that Aaron Dell, to be able to be available to be an emergency call-up from the American Hockey League, needs to pass through waivers at the beginning of the season if he's not going to be on the Maple Leafs' roster, because he is not waiver exempt. And the last 2 times that the Toronto Maple Leafs tried to sneak a goalie through waivers at the start of the season, i.e. Calvin Pickard and Curtis McElhinney, they both got claimed. Now, with teams being so strapped for cash, we may not see very many players being picked off of waivers. But the caveat to that is that most general managers in the NHL are stupid, and they didn't properly prepare for what might be a condensed schedule. They might not have 3 capable goalies. So if they look at you and you got one on waivers, well, they might just take him from you. So the 4 players on my taxi squad would be Liljegren, Sandin, Robertson, and Pierre Engvall. And we got an honorable mention to guys like Barabanov and Korshkov. Korshkov is currently killing it over in the KHL, and I say the best thing for him is probably just to stay over there for the rest of the season and keep killing it like he is. You don't want to disturb that and the development that he's having over there. And Alexander Barabanov, he was right there. But it doesn't mean that we can't see him later on in the season and he can't be rectified and be a call-up later on if someone gets injured. Now, at this point, to get any of the players that are on the taxi squad into games, they would have to be emergency call-ups. So you'd have to have an injury or an extenuating circumstance to bring them up as an emergency call-up, because as you're seeing there in the corner, the Maple Leafs are very, very tight for cap space. Or you could move a guy like Mikko Lehtinen from the active roster and put him on the taxi squad and then move someone from the taxi squad over. But ideally you want Mikko Lehtinen in the lineup. So to have Mikko Lehtinen in the lineup and one of the other guys over there, you'd probably have to use an emergency call-up on one of them. Or you could just roll the dice and say screw it and put Aaron Dell on waivers, but then, like I said, you risk losing him to a stupid general manager that didn't prepare for this season properly. Or the league can just make an exception. And I am not claiming to be, and I do not want to be, an NHL general manager. I do not want to work in hockey operations. I am a journalism student. I am looking at the information that I have currently in front of me, and we are painting the best possible picture that we can together so that we can both understand what's going on. I might have missed the little extra provision that's in the fine print in the CBA under subsection, whatever, that says that if this and that happens, then the Maple Leafs don't have to put Aaron Dell on waivers and they won't have to worry about losing him or calling up anyone under an emergency basis. I've always said, well, doing these videos, if I can get it 90 to 95% of the way there, Kyle Dubas can take care of the rest because he makes a hell of a lot more money than I do talking about this stuff. And like I've said a couple of times in this video, nothing is finalized. This is all subject to change, so when we get the actual announcements, I'm sure I'll do an update video to this, and if I was wrong, I'll make sure to point out that I was wrong. Make sure to like the video if you did like it, and subscribe for more, because more is always on the way. And guys, I know this doesn't really feel like hockey is coming back because some of us just want to watch the games and we don't care about all this little nitty-gritty information with all the numbers, but I do, and that's why I'll take the time to sit here and try to explain it so that we both understand it a little bit more, like I already mentioned. But hockey's getting closer.